Welcome to the FCS Edge, where all of our redshirt seasons are a combination of injuries and many, many coaches' decisions. I'm Craig Haley of Stats Perform and theanalyst.com, along with Zach McKinnell of FCS Football Central on SI. And yes, today we're with the man, the myth, the legend, Sam Herder of Hero Sports for a special preseason roundtable. Zach, let's start with you. How ready are you for the season?
Yeah, man. Only a handful of days away. I'll be at West Florida's FCS opener next Thursday, man. So it feels like it's right around the corner. I'm excited to talk, and we have a great guest today, man. So ready to get to him.
We do. But the bigger question is for Sam. I mean, this offseason, he and his wife, Andrea, had a beautiful baby daughter, Sophia. Sam, are you getting enough sleep before the season?
Yeah, that's usually been the number one question that I've been asked. And thankfully, she's been sleeping really well at night. So, yeah, she usually does sleep all throughout the night unless we have to wake her up for a feeding. But we're lucky on that end because I know it can be the total opposite where she doesn't sleep at all at night and sleeps during the day. So, yeah, we're happy with how she's sleeping.
Well, congratulations, and Zach and I are thrilled to be doing this preseason roundtable with you. You can find our weekly show on your favorite podcast platforms and on our YouTube channel. Just search the FCS Edge. You'll find plenty of content on the analyst.com. Zach, Sam, we have a bunch of topics, so let's get right to it. Give us one hot take that you have for the 2026 FCS season. Sam, you start.
All right, so my hot take is I think there will be at least 7 FCS over FBS wins this year, which would be the most since 2022. Again, it's called a hot take for a reason. And so how likely are we to hit 7? I'm not sure, but I do think there is an interesting slate of games where, I think there's going to be a good number of wins. And every year for the last few seasons, there have been a lot of almost wins as far as an FCS team either having a lead over an FBS team or at least being right there, and then they just end up falling short. I think there was 2 years ago, and maybe last year, there was double-digit single possession losses when it came to FCS versus FBS. So I don't have to go through the entire list, but Montana State, Nevada, Tarleton State, Bowling Green, Idaho State, Utah State, Rhode Island Temple, Sacred Heart, UMass, Southeastern Louisiana, ULM. Those are just a handful that I have circled, but I think there's maybe 4 or 5 more that could be really interesting.
Man, you see, this is the problem here, Craig. Me and Sam think so much alike. I think he might have just stole mine because mine was actually, I think the SWAC breaks the streak of winless against the FBS opponents. It's been since 1985. Grambling actually beat Oregon State that year. I think Alabama State catches Troy this year. And if you remember, Alabama State was one of those games last year where Andrew Body puts up, 400 yards. They were like a play or two away from winning that game. I think Alabama State breaks the SWAC streak. They finally bring an FBS win back to the SWAC, and it'll be a huge moment for HBCU football and just elevating those SWAC programs.
And that Alabama State UAB game, I mean, a monster game, but Andrew had an 80-yard touchdown run negated by a penalty. I mean, he was off the charts that game. So, I mean, just phenomenal. I'm going to give you another one. Montana, number 2 in the Stats Perform preseason top 25. Obviously, we're all touting them. Number 2, I have the Grizz number 3 in my Big Sky predictions. The closer we got to the season, I looked at the schedules but I really focused on UC Davis. I mean, it's such a difference in schedule. I mean, they host the Grizz, but they don't play Montana State. They don't play Northern Arizona or Idaho State, who are also in the top 5 of the conference poll. Meanwhile, and they have all that talent back, of course. But then you put it up against Montana's schedule on the road in Big Sky. Montana, it's brutal. At UC Davis, at Northern Arizona, at a rival Eastern Washington, at Montana State. So yes, even though Montana is going to have another huge year, I have them number 3 in pecking order of the Big Sky. Montana State, UC Davis, Montana. All right, thinking of that way, which team do you feel better about than maybe you originally did in the offseason? Let's go with you, Zach.
Yeah, I think mine was Stephen F. Austin. I was a little bit concerned earlier in the preseason just about the defensive line specifically, right? You lose Xavier Potts, you lose some of those edge rushers, you lose Charles Demmings, who was arguably the best corner in FCS football last year, along with Jalen Mayo, who didn't get a lot of credit at corner. I thought they had a lot to replace this offseason. And I also think I looked at the wide receiver with Colin Harris and was like, how are they really going to replace that production? They bring back Waylon. They go and get my favorite non-Division I transfer in Speedy Jones, who was almost a 2,000-yard rusher as a true freshman last year at New Mexico Highland. He averaged like 11 yards per carry last year, guys, as a true freshman. Kid's going to be unbelievable. And they've returned one of their rotational running backs to add with him. Then you look at some of the guys they bring on that defensive line. All of those guys have high upside, and a few of them have really big potential. And then you add in a guy like an Eli Ennis coming in from UAB, where just 2 years ago, he was an All-American linebacker at Nichols. And a lot of those secondary pieces, too, have proven experience. They even have a guy, Avani Jones, coming in from Coastal Carolina, who was a starter at the FBS level. I think when you look at what that staff did, what they brought in, I think they addressed their needs really, really well in the transfer portal. The offensive line has a little bit of continuity. I actually feel a lot better about Stephen F. Austin, especially I think Rutherford, his experience last year while Vidlac was battling injury is going to be huge for them going into this year. Plus, with the class of 2022 ruling, there are some rumors that Colin Harris is working on a way to get back to Stephen F. Austin next year. If that happens, then they go from probably somewhere in that top 15 range to a bona fide top 10 contender, and again, could make a push for a top 8 seed.
Yeah, for me, I went with UC Davis. The more I looked into the Aggies, the more I liked. And when it came to top 25 preseason ballots, there was kind of a mix. Some voters went with Illinois State, some went with Tarleton State. All good choices. My preseason number 4 was UC Davis. Always a bit of a risk when there's going to be a new starting quarterback, but there are just some programs out there that you trust are going to keep on reloading at that position, especially under head coach Tim Plow and the offensive system that he has. Plus, you look at the weapons that the Aggies have. Jordan Fisher is a 1,000-yard running back. Winston Williams is one of the best tight ends in all of the FCS that his season was shortened last year due to an injury. And then at wide receiver, Samuel Batu Jr. and Stacey Dobbins are highly productive guys. They need to get better defensively, and getting both of the Connors brothers will help. Cofield at cornerback is very strong, and Golagowski on the defensive line, I think, is a very good player as well. Overall, defensively needs to get better, but offensively, if the quarterback hits, which chances are pretty high that it will, I think this offense could be really, really good. And their schedule sets up pretty favorably as well, that I think they can hit double-digit wins.
Sam, that sounds like you have UC Davis number 2 in the Big Sky ahead of the Grizz. Huh? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I do have the Grizz a little bit ahead of UC Davis. So that's a strong top 3 for the Big Sky.
Well, a team that I feel better about, and Zach, you mentioned those cornerbacks at Stephen F. Austin. Here's one I know you like. Damian Henderson at Harvard. As we get closer to the season, I feel very high on Harvard. They had a terrible end to the last year with losing to Yale and then another big loss to Villanova in the playoffs. But they have so much talent back. I think they can get it done in the Ivy League. I think they can win it. They've lost 4 straight against Yale, that last game of the season. I think this one helps that they're in Fenway Park, not on the road at, say, Yale. Plenty of weapons. Dante Torres will probably be their quarterback, offensive line. That defense is stacked, and that includes Damian Henderson at in the secondary, Sean Line at linebacker. I think Harvard has enough talent to get it done this year and take out Yale, which has been, their nemesis in recent years. Gentlemen, there's a lot of fun. Let's go to the next question. Which team outside the preseason top 10 do you feel can legitimately reach the national semifinals or final? I'll start this one. I think this is a tough one because you go outside the top 10, it's hard to find a team that you feel that confident in. I'll go with Austin Peay. Obviously, we all know about Chris Parson being back at quarterback, and he just got better and better last year with lights out. Their defense was pretty solid last year. They're coming out of probably the 3rd best conference in the UAC. So I think they're going to have a big year and really be a chance to be a seed. They went 6-0 at home last year. I'm going to go at Austin Peay. They were about 14th, I believe, in the top 25 preseason poll. Sam, who do you think can really come out of nowhere? Not out of nowhere, but come from outside the top 10?
Yeah, let's go with Yale because they get their starting quarterback back in Dante Reno, plus 6 all-conference players, including Abu Kamara, who's a safety, Ivy League Defensive Player of the Year. They also get Phoenix Grant back as well, who was near 100 tackles, and they made maybe one of the splashiest head coaching hires in recent memory, taking Kevin Cahill from Lehigh, who was the Eddie Robinson Coach of the Year last year. And so I think coaching staff and talent-wise, things set up nicely for Yale. And Illinois State kind of bucked this trend last year, but usually to make a deep playoff run, you need a favorable seed. And I think with how Yale's schedule sets up, if they can go undefeated and if they can beat Rhode Island, who I think is going to be highly ranked at the time, they get Rhodey at home. And let's say they do go 10-0 with a top 6-7 win against Rhode Island, all of a sudden we could be talking about Yale could sneak into being a 6, 7, or 8 seed and go on a decent run. So obviously, if they get the 8 seed, they would probably be lining up with Montana State. So maybe not as much, but I just feel like Yale, again, it very much a sleeper pick, but they could potentially make a deep playoff run.
Yeah, no, that's a really good pick. Yale was one I considered. Also considered Southern Illinois a little bit if DJ has another big year in that defense. But I'm going to go with the team that Missouri Valley fans love to hate and hate when I hype up. It's going to be Tennessee Tech for me. Listen, I had them 6 in my ballot. I think I was the highest of any voter in the FCS Stats Perform poll, and I've owned it. I mean, I think Bobby Wilder and what he did this offseason with this roster has built this team. They're going to be significantly better than they were last year. I know everyone's worried about the transition to the SoCon, and it will be a much tougher road. And I think if they get through the SoCon, this will be a much more battle-tested team when they get to the playoffs. But I think the key things are, I think offensive line, they reloaded when you look at the type of bodies and the type of players they brought in. They might have the best running back room depth-wise in the FCS with all the talent, including MJ Flowers, who was freshman All-American, all OVC Big South a few years ago before he went to UConn. Then you look at some of the wide receiver talent, but Richie Munoz, I think, is a big upgrade at quarterback. I like him a bit more in his ceiling than Kekoa Visperas, who was their starter last year. And I think that defense is going to be just as good as it was last year. So I'm just putting a lot of stock into what Wilder built here. They have a lot to prove, and there's a lot of pressure on Tennessee Tech after how last year ended. But I'm going to say out of those outside of the top 10 teams, I think Tennessee Tech has a really, really good shot to make a run.
I like it. Zach has woken everybody up to how special of a year it could be for Tennessee Tech going into the SoCon. And Sam totally knocked out my Harvard pick from a few minutes ago as he touts Yale. So I love that. Gentlemen, we're going to go about 10 topics. This is number 4. What team do you think is ranked too far down in its conference preseason poll and will challenge for the title in that conference? Start with you, Sam.
Yeah, I think one that maybe caught my eye, even though I didn't necessarily disagree with its ranking. But when you look at South Dakota being picked 5th in the Valley, again, the Valley probably goes 6 teams deep as far as being playoff worthy. So with the question marks at South Dakota, especially at the quarterback position compared to everyone else in the Valley, maybe 5th is deserved. But again, they've made 3 straight quarterfinals. They've routinely been near the top of the Valley. So when it just comes to the question of who will challenge for the title, that is maybe too far down low. I think honestly there might be 6 Valley teams all challenging near the top, and so South Dakota at 5th is one that kind of caught my eye.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I'll go with like a real dark horse with this one. I think Wofford in the SoCon got a little bit overlooked. I think they were like 6th or 7th in the preseason poll. And you look at last year's team, and that team was I think less than they were 12 points away from being 11-1 last year. I mean, just every single loss came down to a handful of points, and they got 20 significant contributors coming back, starting quarterback coming back. The defense is loaded. Eli Campbell's a guy I'll look at. Wofford actually played really well against some of the better teams on their schedule last year. They only lose by 1 to South Carolina State, who was the Celebration Bowl champs last year. I think they have a chance to make some noise. And talking with some of those players and coaches at SoCon Media Day, they're really, really confident that they can make a run. And I think they're going to finish well above 6th in the SoCon next year.
I'll give you one. I'll go to the Pioneer League. I mean, Presbyterian, it's an 11-team league. They were picked 7th. They're on a 14-2 stretch right now going back to 2024. They tied for 2nd place last year, 6-2 in the league. They went 10-2 overall. Some terrific out-of-conference wins. Obviously, the Pioneer League is deep and a little bit wide open this year, and Presbyterian lost a lot. But in this day and age, who hasn't lost a lot? I mean, they have a new coach, Matt Rawl, who's been on staff the last couple of years. I just think 7th is kind of low for a team that should be in the mix of the Pioneer League. So I'll go with Presbyterian. All right, we can go on, and we have about how terrific the FCS quarterbacks are, the returnees this season. I mean, I mentioned Chris Parson earlier at Austin Peay. I mean, he's one of them, and he enjoyed a breakout last year in his first year at Austin Peay. Which quarterback who's off the radar will have a national breakout this season? Who do you think, Zach?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jerry Kaminsky from North Dakota. I think he takes a big step forward. I don't think I saw him in any top 10s coming into the season, which that just speaks to the level of quarterback, like you said, we have coming back, that this kid didn't make it. I think early in the season, you saw some flashes. He played really well on the road against Montana early in the year, had some big performances, but down the stretch, man, he was not very good. Struggled with consistency, struggled with some accuracy things. And I think that just comes with being a first-year starter in the Valley as a true sophomore. And so I think Kaminsky's going to take a big step forward. He had the big performance at the Manning Passing Academy and winning the Air It Out competition over some elite FBS quarterbacks. And all signs coming out of camp for UND have said that he's taken a big step forward. The question is going to be, do they have the wide receivers around him like they did last year with BJ Fleming and some of those guys? But I think in terms of just overall play, Kaminsky didn't get the credit, man. He's athletic out of the pocket too. He had quietly 600-700 rushing yards as well. I don't think people talk about his mobility much. I think Jerry Kaminsky is being kind of overlooked here in that Missouri Valley quarterback conversation, and even nationally. I think he's due for a pretty big year.
Yeah, I went with Jordan Cook of Idaho State. I feel like, maybe it's just because Idaho State isn't as big of a brand name in the FCS, but Cook is, he's very high up on a lot of top returning quarterback lists, but as far as just casual FCS fans, they might not know a whole lot about Jordan Cook. But I think just as far as arm talent, Chase Mason, DJ Williams, Jordan Cook, they might not be the top 3 quarterbacks overall in the FCS, but they might be the top 3 as far as most talented arms. He's going to put up big time numbers at Idaho State with that offense. He gets Cheaton James back, who was an All-American for Idaho State a few years ago. So he needs to take better care of the ball. He hasn't really had a great touchdown to interception ratio, but if he can hone that in, I think he's set for a really nice season this year.
Those guys are going to be special. You guys are right. I'm going to go to the CAA. I think there's plenty of candidates of some breakouts there. I mean, if you go to Monmouth, Frankie Weaver as a redshirt freshman last year, we were all focused on Derek Robertson's injury. Will he be back? Won't he be back? Frankie Weaver went out last 3 games of the year, 11 touchdown passes without an interception. I think he's going to have a breakout. I think maybe he's, kind of a known name because Monmouth's a top 25 team. But across the conference, you go to Stony Brook, Quinn Boyd. He took over last year. Last 5 games he started. He had just a smidge under 300 yards of total offense per game over those final 5 games at Stony Brook. I think he can break out. I mean, even if you go to Villanova, I mean, obviously we know what's happening with the Pat McQuaid situation. It doesn't look like he's going to be playing. The Patriot League has ruled him ineligible. I think just a sinking feeling without knowing for sure. I think Nolan DeLucia, true freshman, I think he could come in, win the job, and be special. I think Villanova, because of the team of their stature, I think that's a quarterback that we'll start to focus on. I think it's going to be Nolan DeLucia. All right. Zach and I are so pleased to be doing this roundtable with Sam Herder of Hero Sports. Gentlemen, we're halfway through our questions. Here's number 6. There are 2 new programs in the FCS this year. West Florida's up from Division II in the United Athletic Conference. Chicago State's playing an independent schedule their first year. They're an NEC member, but just as an independent. Finish these 2 sentences, gentlemen. West Florida's best FCS win will be ... Chicago State's best FCS win will be. Let's start with you, Zach.
Yeah, I think West Florida gets West Georgia to end the season in that kind of renewed rivalry game. I think West Georgia lost a lot, and I think West Florida is going to be hyped up to get that game back on the schedule. And also, they're going to have a full season to get their D1 legs under them. I think they have a chance to do something big. I mean, gosh, for the other ones, a lot harder. I think there's a real chance Chicago State doesn't get a D1 win this year, but if I had to pick one, I think they might get Butler there on the 19th on the road at Butler. That's probably their best shot. Man, they got a really, really tough schedule for a first-year program.
Sam?
Yeah, for West Florida, I went with a win at Eastern Kentucky. I think that would be a really solid win. You know, EKU might not be ranked at that point, but it seems like Eastern Kentucky is always either right in the top 25 or hovering around the top 25. So I think that would be a really quality win. Yeah, Chicago State is a bit tougher as well. It's really hard to know what we're going to get out of that program, especially early on. They played Lindenwood early on, or not, or middle of the season, and Lindenwood is like pretty decent. They were right around 500, so that could be one where maybe things start to click middle of the year, and they get that one with a surprise win.
Very nice. I'm going to go for West Florida. I'm going to go with them beating Central Arkansas. They have their leading rusher back, TJ Lane. The defense really gets after quarterbacks with their pass rush. I think that's huge. I think, getting Central Arkansas early helps because they'll be coming off playing Southern Illinois. They'll have their feet wet here on the FCS level. I'm going to go with Central Arkansas as a win for West Florida. Chicago State, I agree with you, gentlemen. It's going to be tough for them to get an FCS win. I think you could make a case for Norfolk State off their tough year last year, but I have a feeling, even though it's at Chicago State, that Michael Vick's not going to let them lose to Chicago State. I'll go with Zach said. I'll go with Butler, a Pioneer non-scholarship team, but still a very good program. Bobby Rome, though, has brought in a lot of transfers to try and get it done here early on at Chicago State. All right, topic number 7. Sam has already published his top 5 predictions for the Walter Payton Award, for the Buck Buchanan Award. So let's talk 40th anniversary season of the Eddie Robinson Award. Who's your pick for FCS Coach of the Year and why? And let's start with Sam.
Yeah, this award, sometimes us voters will go with maybe not the best coach, but the best coaching job, where a team goes from 5-7 to 10-2, and we reward, that really great coaching job with being number 1 on our ballot. But, sometimes we might overthink it a little bit. And for me, this is kind of a boring answer, but I feel like sometimes we avoid like just giving who is the best coach, this award. And I think Brent Vigen is going to be very much deserving of it. I can see them running the table this year, and there's going to be a lot of great turnarounds, some great stories in the FCS. But at the end of the day, sometimes we just don't have to overthink, and we just go, Brent Vigen is the best head coach in the FCS. His team is the best team in the FCS. He deserves to win the award this year.
Yeah, can't go wrong with that. I'm actually, and I think I mentioned this on Sam's show, is that I'm going to go with Chennis Berry here as one of my favorites. I think that South Carolina State has a really, really good shot to win the MEAC again, possibly get back to the Celebration Bowl 3 consecutive years. And Craig, I mean, if he runs through the MEAC again, he'll be undefeated in conference play his first 3 seasons as a Division I head coach, which I don't care what conference you're in. I don't care if the MEAC had 2 teams. That's impressive with some of the team. I mean, because you got to think, you got to go through Deshaun Jackson. He had to go through Trey Oliver. So he had to go through some proven coaches. And so, and plus, if they get it done in out of conference play, I think they play Furman this year, which would be a big out of conference win for them. They can avenge that Charleston Southern loss from last year. But I don't think Chennis Berry has gotten the amount of credit and love he deserves for what he built at South Carolina State. And so that's who I'm going to go with here.
And, with the Eddie Robinson Award, you can usually make a case for like 5 to 10 people as legitimate reasons why they should be, coach of the year. There's only one who can win, but the jobs these coaches do and their staffs do is just phenomenal. I'm going to go to the Big Sky and go back to, I was touting UC Davis. I'll go Coach Tim Plow. 2 straight quarterfinal round appearances for the Aggies in his first 2 seasons. So they've been knocking at the door. I think they're going to have this banner regular season. I think they'll go deep in the playoffs. I'll tell you what, his first 2 seasons, Coach Pyle, the completion percentage of his quarterbacks, it's the highest among all programs still in the FCS. So I think they're going to get it done. Shout out to Bobby Wilder at Tennessee Tech. Zach's pick on how big of a year I think he'd be in the mix if they have that kind of season. But all right, next question, gentlemen. The 2026 season will be back in Nashville for the FCS National Championship game on January 11th. What city, when this cycle is done, what city do you want the 2027 season championship game to be held in? Zach?
Yeah, Nashville. I mean, I think this is a very clear answer for me. Nothing against Frisco, but I don't know about you guys, but it just had a different type of energy, and I think the FCS for the most part, especially when those high caliber teams get there, have outgrown that stadium in Frisco. And I think you saw last year in Nashville, I mean, no one expected Illinois State to bring as many fans as they did. And we knew what Montana State was going to do on their side. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it looked a lot more than the announced attendance. And me and Sam kind of talked about that. Like, I mean, listen, if the capacity is what they say it is, we had a lot more than what they said, but we'll see. But I mean, I think if you could imagine a South Dakota State, Montana State get there this year, guys, they're going to sell out that Vandy Stadium 1,000%. And we've seen it over and over. Those fan bases travel. I think the downtown area, you saw how many fans were excited to go and all the different places to stay. I just think Nashville, for right now, is a way better host city for the FCS National Championship as it continues to grow and expand. And I think we need room to grow even further. And I think Nashville offers that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it should stay in Nashville. And I think it was just a nice breath of fresh air for the FCS championship game. And I think it should stay in Nashville. I don't know how super long term it should, because reality is it's probably going to be the same combination of teams for the next 5 or so years. And, it's hard to say that Nashville will get stale. It probably won't. But, if Montana State makes that trip 4 times in the next 5 years, like, they might be looking for something different as well. So I would like to see it bounce around a little bit. I understand that's difficult for the NCAA because it's easy to put it in a spot for 3-4 years just with hotels and vendors. But I would like to stay in Nashville. I think, I've heard maybe Orlando could be in the mix. San Antonio, I've heard. I know Tampa has been interested. I've heard Vegas has at least kicked the tires on hosting the game, but they've never submitted a formal bid. So I did a story, and I can't remember the exact number, but I think it was low 30 million in economic impact that the FCS championship game brought to Nashville. So that's just going to make even more towns and cities interested in hosting this game because, tourism isn't always the highest in January. And if you could bring in 25,000 fans that like to, drink and eat food, like I think a lot of cities will want to host this game.
Well, three's company, because I thought you guys would surely take a Florida city or a warm weather city. I didn't myself. I'd like to see it go back to Frisco, and not necessarily long term. I like the idea of moving it around, but I do think when this second level of renovations is done at Toyota Stadium, I think there's going to be a wow factor to that stadium. I'd like to see that. I think the NCAA maybe owes them a year just because the renovations kind of took away last year being in Frisco. I just like to see it go back for at least a year. The Frisco was good to the FCS level. Dallas is easy to get to. I do like the idea of moving around. I think Nashville is outstanding, and it should be there in the future. I just would like to see another season in Frisco, especially after the stadium renovations. All right, gentlemen. So many programs are looking to get to the FBS level. And you know what? A James Madison or this year a North Dakota State, I mean, they were ready for their FCS to FBS moves. Now, if you were guiding a non-elite FCS program, say as athletic director, would you make the move to FBS and risk being a small fish in a big pond for maybe a long time?
Yeah, I think this is all program dependent. Like, there's a lot of nuance to this, but me personally, no. I think the NDSUs and James Madisons of the world, yes. If I was leading a program like that, I'd be ready to move up because I know we could compete. But I think that we've seen a few programs move up that just weren't ready, and there's a ton of G6 programs that are probably, let's just be honest, like would be better FCS programs. I mean, do you want to be a UMass forever? No offense to UMass, but like, eventually that's going to wear on the fan base, man. And I think you even see some of the fans online chatter about coming to back to the FCS. Louisiana Monroe is another one where the fans have kind of talked about that possibility. They're tired of being the bottom feeders of the G6. And I think as you see the top of the G6 continue to increase their funding and increase their revenue and how much they're investing back into athletics, the divide between the top G6 programs and the pretenders at the G6 level is going to continue to widen. And I think those conversations are going to start up again in terms of, should there be a separation of the G6? Like, is Tulane on the same level as a UMass? Probably not, right? In terms of just different things. And so I personally wouldn't. I think you need to be an elite program with elite funding and elite resources to make that move and be successful. And if I'm just an average FCS program, there's no reason to go be a small fish in a big pond and get beat on every week.
Sam?
Yeah, I think for this question, for non-elite FCS programs, I think the FCS is a perfect subdivision for you. Like, if you're Furman, UIW, Weber State, Northern Iowa, Eastern Washington, like the FCS is perfect for you because you're playing Division I football, you're D1 and all the other sports. FCS is, it's the mid-major level. You don't have to pour, a ton of money into football. And, some people will say that FCS football is unsustainable. Well, if you want to make that argument, then I would say that Group of Six is even more unsustainable because they're bleeding even more money from the student pockets and the university pockets. So if you're kind of middle of the road, even if you're 25 through 15 in the FCS, I think the FCS is the place to be right now. But if you are an elite program like Tarleton State and the Dakotas and the Montana schools and UC Davis, I don't think they need to have the same level of urgency as Sacramento State or NDSU, but I do think they need to be doing things behind the scenes to at least, get ready. Whether it is, the Mountain West wants 2 more teams in 4 years and they call the Montana schools, well, you have to have your ducks in a row. And I think the Montana schools should take that invite if they ever get it. But you need your funding in place and your staffing in place. You can't say, give us 1 more year, then we'll give you an answer. You need to be ready to go. So I think it's just the way of the world where as more brand names leave the FCS, the other brand names kind of look around and go, is this the best subdivision for us right now? Like I said, I don't think anyone needs to be in a rush to move up. Because if you're Montana State or South Dakota State, like these next 5 years could be your glory years. Like rack up national titles as best you can. And then once kind of stuff hits the fan in the 2030s with more realignments, you'll be even more attractive with whatever, comes next as far as potentially moving up.
Well, I'll put you both on the spot. Yes or no? Should Sacramento State have made this move this year? Sam?
I think yes, just because they didn't really have a choice to. Like they guaranteed FBS no matter what roadblocks they hit. Even when they were denied by, I think it was the D1 Council, they still said, nope, we're still going FBS. And so they kicked down whatever door they could, and they ended up paying their way into the MAC. I'll be interested to see what their attendance looks like, if it goes up or if it goes down. But I think in Sacramento State's situation, they didn't really have a choice but to just kick down whatever FBS opportunity door was open for them.
Yeah, I'm with Sam. Like if we're talking my decision after the comments made by the president and everything, then listen, we got to be a man of our word. Like we're going to have to figure out how to get up there. But if you're asking me if I was Dr. Wood, if I would have made those comments, no, I still think they still have some stuff to prove at the FCS level. And I think there would have been a cheaper, easier path to the FBS if they would have just waited. But I mean, listen, after we made the comments, listen, we got to commit to the bit. Man of our word, we're getting to the FBS come hell or high water.
Well, that won't be the last thing Dr. Wood will say that'll ruffle feathers. I'm gonna go with yes. I would make the move. Yeah, I mean, James Madison or NDSU, they had to make the move. They were ready. But a non-elite program, yeah, I'd still make the move. I think opportunity only comes along so many times, and if you pass it, it may not come back. I think the money, particularly the TV money, is just too good on the FBS level. You kind of just make that plunge and try and make it work as you go along, even if you're not quite ready at the moment. I think it's tough to say no to an opportunity. And I think fan bases may like to be FCS, but if that opportunity comes along, I think most of them are going to say, you know what, here's our chance. Let's do it. All right. 10th question, final one. Last week, I joked on the FCS Edge that I asked him if Zach was named commissioner of the FCS during the offseason. Well, today's the chance. And we're gonna have Zach go last, as the final say. If you were FCS commissioner for a day, what's your one move? You know what? I'll go first this time. I would tell the NCAA to start governing again. I just think in recent years, it's just hasn't happened at all. I mean, we've seen how so many players have played, 6, 7, 8, crazy amount of years of eligibility. I think the NCAA is too scared of lawsuits. I mean, we all see that college athletics is spinning out of control. There doesn't seem to be any leadership from the top. They rubber stamp so much. I just think we need to bring college athletics back to what it should be. And yes, it's a money making venture. Players should be doing well with NIL, but at the same time, we're also there to have colleges give a formal education, and that's kind of lost here as we look at athletics. I just don't think the NCAA is governing anymore, and there needs to be some of that moving forward. Sam?
Yeah, I would make it my absolute mission and be ultra aggressive in trying to make the FCS playoffs more financially incentivizing for teams. I think that would really help with realignment, because for a lot of teams, you hear when they've moved up to the FBS, a lot of the times they've said, well, this one year we made the national championship game and it ended up costing us total, like $300,000. And, I tweeted out, some of the numbers where I do think the value of the FCS is much higher than we like. The FCS wanted at least a valuation on the FCS playoffs to see how much it was worth, and I don't believe the NCAA provided those numbers. And it is difficult because the FCS playoffs are a part of the wider package of all the NCAA tournaments, and there's like some advertising packages, as well. Not to get into the weeds with that, but I think if you can pull out the FCS playoffs a little bit, you could get a better TV deal. You could expand sponsorship money. And if you do that, you can not have to worry about teams bidding to host games, and they could take more of their ticket revenue cuts. The TV numbers are there. The attendance is there for the most part. I think there's a misconception that, all the bowl games, they get better TV ratings anyways. Well, last year there was 3 FCS playoff games that got better TV ratings than, like, it was right around 15 bowl games. So if bowl games can make money, why can't the FCS playoffs make money? So if I was FCS commissioner, I would be very, very aggressive. I don't know if I would threaten the NCAA, but I would say, hey, you guys value the FCS playoffs. Well, this private equity money or private equity company wants to take us private, and they're going to give us a lot of cash, and they're actually going to go out and sell us to, get a better TV deal. And they're actually going to go out and sell, ad packages and make this very valuable for FCS teams, where the further you go, the more money you make. So if I was FCS commissioner, that would be my mission.
Nice.
Yeah. This is why going last is always tough. That was the easiest answer. Like it's increasing the amount of money you can make being at the FCS level. Because I think then if you do that, it changes the conversation we just had with number 9, where a lot of these teams, if the FCS playoffs became financially viable, I think you would see multiple programs drop from G6 back to the FCS personally, because that's why a lot of them are up there. And like Sam said, you shouldn't lose money making a national championship run. And I really do think you look at what the Celebration Bowl is, and it's like, well, a lot of those sponsors are there for the TV. Well, you look, since they moved the game to Monday, the FCS National Championship has been above the Celebration Bowl the past 2 years, or tied it. And then the last 2 years, actually, the National Championship and Celebration Bowl haven't been the highest viewed FCS game. It's been a semifinal game the past 2 years. And I think 1 year was the quarterfinals. It was like South Dakota State or someone like that in the quarters did like 2.8 million, which is insane. And so like the TV value is there. But to give an answer maybe different than Sam, I think we should look into an FCS network, like FCS TV. Like, you look at how successful SWAC TV's been. There's a market for that. And if ESPN is not going to value you, we talk about TV deals. Look at all the money the SWAC's making right now. It's the highest grossing FCS conference. They're making money. And Dr. Charles McKinnell has hinted they're announcing a really big sponsor in the coming weeks, or a big announcement about SWAC TV. And I think if you could find a way to take the FCS away from all the other tournaments and maybe do its own TV deal or do its own network where you can sell directly these games, I think that could be a big step forward, just thinking kind of outside the box, even outside of making the playoffs financially viable.
So we're giving it all a thumbs up to the health of FCS?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Thumbs up then. Gentlemen, a lot of fun. Can't believe how fast the summer flies by. I mean, the season begins next week, week 0, 2 nights. of the only game in town for Division I being FCS. FBS doesn't come in until Saturday the 29th. I know you guys are looking forward to it, huh?
Yeah, it's going to be great to finally have off-season topics go to the wayside and actually have some games to talk about. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, tired of all the off-season talk, Craig. I don't want to talk any more predictions. We've made our predictions, man. It's time to talk about who's winning next week.
Well, hopefully our viewers and listeners to the FCS have enjoyed all the talk here. It's been a lot of fun. Zach and I bringing in Sam Herder for a preseason roundtable. Sam, congratulations to you, Andrea, and Sophia. Zach, congratulations on being commissioner at least for a day of the FCS. And we will see everybody next week. We hope you enjoyed the FCS Edge.